Baby, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to a special Halloween episode of Let's Talk Turkeys. Now, this is a bonus episode, and I'm Movie Miss. Today, we are discussing what scary movie do you love and why? Now, I reached out, Instagram, Facebook, text to friends of the show, listeners, fans, and I wanted everybody's input. What is your favorite scary movie and why? It doesn't have to be because it's scary. Just wanted to know about the love for the films out there in the horror genre, which is my personal favorite genre. Horror is a lifestyle. We do it year round, but in the spooky season, we've got to talk horror, right? I mean, come on. So as you know, normally we talk turkeys, which to us means we hated a movie, our guest or co-host hated a movie, or it has a low Rotten Tomatoes score. That's not the case on today's episode. So let's just jump right in. Without further ado, let's get to the good stuff, shall we? I assume you're going to listen to this because A, you're awesome and you support us and you're a fan of the show, but B, because you love horror. And also, don't be afraid to reach out to us on socials. I would love to know. We have our Let's Talk Turkeys Facebook page, but we also have our Let's Talk Turkeys, the podcast discussion group on Facebook. We also have an Instagram, Let's Talk Turkeys. So let me know, chime in on this episode. I want to know what your favorite scary movie is and why. And let's see if you agree or disagree with any of this. All right, let's jump in and get right to the good stuff. So before we get to everybody's input, I did a little research and it turns out Rotten Tomatoes did ask all of its people that, all the users, the people that use their site, what movie terrifies you the most? So a little different than my topic today, but let's just find out. Turns out they did a top 10. Let's jump in and do that list. I'll just run through it real quick. So at number 10, we have It, Chapter 1 from 2017. Number 9 is Insidious. Number 8, Sinister. Number 7, Halloween from 1978. Number 6 is The Ring from 2002, the American version. Number 5, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, of course. Number 4, The Shining. Number 3, The Conjuring, the first one. Number 2, Hereditary, Boo Hiss. That's just my personal input. And number 1, The Exorcist, which that came as no surprise to me, to be honest with you. So The Shining has the highest audience score on the list, 93%. And Halloween, 1978, has the highest critics score on the list at 96%. So that makes complete sense to me. How do you feel about that? Let me know. I'm curious. So then I also did some research and I found a super interesting article, the top 10 scientifically scary movies. So they basically, and these are modern scary movies, nothing, older, nothing from like the 80s or 90s. They measured the average heart rate, the differences and the highest spikes of all the users who were watching the film and participating in this study. Turns out, top 10 scientifically most scary movie. Number 1 was Sinister. Now you may be thinking to yourself, what movie is that? Or, ooh, I don't think that movie's scary at all. I'm here to tell you, give it a rewatch. I'm not a fan of Ethan Hawke. The movie Sinister is creepy AF, y'all. It has the atmosphere, the tone, how it's shot, the score, the pacing. It is like true crime / horror movie. It's such a good mix, and I can see why it got everybody's heart rate up 100%. So then as we jot down the rest of the list, number 2 was Insidious. Coming in at 3 was The Conjuring. 4, Hereditary. 5, the original Paranormal Activity. 6, It Follows, Boo Hiss, if you know my personal feelings on it. 7, The Conjuring 2, which I would argue is the scariest one in the franchise. Number 8 was The Babadook, reverse raspberry for the Babadook. That movie blew chunks. That's just my opinion, y'all, but this is my show and I can tell you my opinion. Number 9, The Descent. Oh, I totally agree with that. And I feel like it should have ranked higher. And number 10, The Visit. M. Night Shyamalan. And again, you might be thinking, oh, that movie was so dumb. But again, remember now with this list, and I can see honestly why Hereditary and It Follows would be on this list, because there are moments of jump scares and things where, your heart rate would jump. So a spike. So I get why scientifically this list is what it is. But number one, Sinister. Rotten Tomatoes. Number one, The Exorcist. Those track for me. All right, so let's jump into what y'all had to say. Here we go. No surprise to me, the biggest response was Halloween 1978. So this is the feedback that we got for Halloween. I saw it way too young and it had a lasting impression on me. That was Jessica. Jessica, girl, I feel you. I don't remember how old I was when I saw this, but to this day, the music cues, the tension, the pacing, it gets me. It totally gets me. I feel you. We also have Marquetta jumping in, saying it's the best horror character with Michael Myers. That mask and the lack of expression thereof, his gaze and the way he carries himself, the visual shots and directing. Of course, John Carpenter is masterful. And Jamie Lee Curtis being the original Scream Queen. This is why that is her favorite. Then we have another, Saw It Too Young, the taboo effect, and then it had her looking over her shoulder for years. And that was Bren. Girl, same. I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot this episode. I agree with a lot of what y'all had to say about these movies. Classic slasher film. The acting is realistic. Michael Myers is a simple design. And of course, the score. And that was Dave. The human monster is much more frightening than a supernatural one. The score, of course. Not relying solely on jump scares in this movie. And it's a slasher staple with blood and nudity. And that's what you want from your horror movie. So that's Robin. We have a simple one here from Gary. Gary says, it's the way Michael Myers just keeps coming. I'm with you. He's relentless in this movie. He walks so slow and you don't know where he is. And it's just so ominous, everything about it. I hear you. And then we have I Saw It Too Young. When I was young and impressionable. That seems to be a theme here with these. The music, of course, the very atmospheric, and the basic brutality of the murders. So that was Tim. The music, the directing, the cinematography, the blank expression of the mask, and it's just all genuinely scary to me. And that's Richie. I agree with his assessment. I really do. And then our last entry on that one is that it is atmospheric, suspenseful, well written, well cast, especially Donald Pleasance, the score, and arguably the start of the slasher genre, because really, if you really want to be nitpicky about it, and I agree with this is Martin's assessment. He says, along with Black Christmas, which came 4 years earlier. Martin, I think you're right. I think Black Christmas, if you ask people who are, review movies for a living and do this sort of thing, that's the deal. Black Christmas really started the slasher genre, not Halloween. But because Halloween is more widely known, it gets the credit. And then, of course, we have Halloween 2 getting an honorable mention from Jeremiah. And he says simply because the movie just stuck with him. So there you have it. That is Halloween's presence on this list. So now we're going to move on to The Exorcist, which came up a lot. I'm going to say that it is my favorite scary movie in the sense that it truly scares me, chills me to my bone, creeps me out. It's so spooky. It gets under my skin to this day. And I'm going to attribute that to the subject matter, the music, the score, the performances, the pacing, the elements of religion and the church and demons and good versus evil. Everything about this movie works for me. It is effective on every level in every way it's supposed to be. This is my favorite scary movie of all time. So we've got Richard, who says it is creepy with the good versus evil theme, child versus demon, just the subject matter in general. We've got Keith, who feels the pacing is there, the drawn out tension building with the direction, shocking dialogue. Everything about it is just unnerving. Agreed, 100%. Demon possession, the subject matter in general, fantastically believable performances, the special effects for the time, ominous music. So that's Greg. I agree with everything there, Greg. Flawless acting lends to the believability, the story being rooted in a real thing. The it can happen to anyone, quote unquote, part of the movie makes it feel more terrifying. The directing is phenomenal. The soundtrack, or lack thereof, in a lot of parts of this film. And of course, the demonic stuff in general is scary. And that is Fred. I agree with everything you said, Fred. I really do. Especially the lack thereof with the soundtrack. Ooh, man, they just knew when you needed to hear nothing but breathing or light ambient noise. It just gets under your skin somehow. And then we've got Steve, who says it's the classic satanic plot, the it could happen to anyone, quote unquote, making it very scary. So there you have it. That's The Exorcist. So coming in with 4 entries that I'm going to mention, but I'm going to throw in a 5th because this would be my follow-up to The Exorcist. This would be like my number 2 favorite scary movie, but I don't technically consider it a scary movie. I consider it more of an action adventure with horrific elements. It is Jaws from 1975. Now, a lot of people consider this a horror movie because it does have horrific things happen in it. But again, like I said, a lot of the movie turns out to be more Indiana Jones-ish in the vibe, where it's the music even lends to that in the scenes where they're on the boat. It's the action adventure, the men on the mission, and the horrific stuff. There's only a few kills in this movie and a little bit of blood. It's not what I consider a horror movie, but it did come up. So for me, like I said, it's a number 2, only behind The Exorcist. But here we go. We've got plausible horror encounters with a shark where it could potentially happen. That makes it scary. That's Richard. I agree with that assessment, totally. We have It Has Everything, horror, tension, and humor. It's just a classic. And that's David. I agree with you, sir. So this one was good. I like this one. Gary says it's very Hitchcockian in tension building up to where we finally get to see the shark. Totally agree with you. And then we have Mark saying, because he saw it as a small child, it was terrifying. And that includes the honorable mention for Jaws 2. So because of seeing them as a small child, they stuck with him as terrifying. 100% agree with that. Isn't that most scary movies though, really, y'all? Like you see them young and then they just get stuck in your brain and you're like, that's what terrifies me. Also high on the list here, we have An American Werewolf in London from 1981, which I absolutely love. This movie started my obsession with monster movies, but more specifically, werewolves as a subgenre. I'm obsessed with werewolves. It's my favorite monster movie. Vampires is a close second. I wouldn't consider zombies monsters, but maybe they're a third if you consider them monsters. But in any event, American Werewolf in London, people chimed in saying special effects, the wolf transformation scene, and the actors. That is Ian, and that is why that is his favorite. I saw it very young. There's that again. Saw it very young, terrifying, and it just stays with you. And that's Mark. First proper, quote unquote, horror film that he ever saw after years of growing up on the black and white Universal monster films. So it's both horrific and funny. And that's Blue. I agree with you on that, Blue, 100%. Horror and funny makes a good combo to me. And this movie has like the perfect balance of that. You're totally on point. We have The Attack on the Moors, possibly being the scariest thing he has ever seen at 10 years old, and it stuck with him. And that's Simon. Again, when you see a movie young, it just gets in your head and you can't ever get rid of it. So next up, we have The Thing from 1982. I love this film. It has a little bit of everything. So we've got Mark, who says he saw it very young. You've got the horror and comedy elements, and of course, the soundtrack. Agreed. That classic Carpenter soundtrack. Are you kidding me? Then we have fast-paced opening, special effects. It's gory and scary. The directing, the way it's shot, it's John Carpenter's best film, and that is Chris. I would probably agree with that. I think it's in his top 3 for sure. And then we've got sense of dread, isolation, helplessness, and then we add the beauty, but harsh in the landscape, and that's Simon. So then we've also got ranked pretty high here was Alien from 1979. Again, I consider this more of a sci-fi movie than a horror movie, but I am madly in love with this film. And we've got some input here from some of you. Tim says, It is very atmospheric and claustrophobic, and that's what does it for him. I agree. Almost invincible creature, seeming like a plausible scenario. I mean, if we went into space and everything. Tension on who's next, where's the creature, claustrophobic, and the feeling of being trapped. And that's what does it for Shara. Girl, same. Didn't I say that was going to be a theme here? Yes, 100%. And then we've got a masterclass in filmmaking. It's mysterious, atmospheric, and the idea of what the alien actually is scary. And that's Graham. He's dead on. The thought of what that alien is just terrifying. And I forgot to mention when we were talking about Jaws a minute ago, there's an honorable mention for Jaws 3D. That's a turkey. But she saw it at 8 years old, and that's Katrina. And I would argue most things are terrifying at 8 years old if it's a horror movie or, people in terrifying situations. So I agree with you. I saw those films when I was younger, not that young, but they can be terrifying. Sure. Perilous situations with, a shark, even if the shark looks like a floating turd, like in Jaws 3. Yes. So Katrina, there you go. Honorable mention, girl. So now we have a couple people who chimed in and said Insidious from 2011 really gets them going here. It's their favorite scary movie, and that is suspenseful, but not too cheesy. Just overall well done. And that's Michaela. I would agree with you, Michaela. I believe that's a James Wan film, so he's very good at the tension building. You are 100% right about that. And then Jay, my girl Jay chimed in. I'm so happy that she did because she points out something really awesome about this movie that people forget. The use of that song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips, it gets under her skin and bothers her to this day. She doesn't want to listen to it because she thinks of this film. And I would say that is an amazing use of a somewhat innocent sounding older song. And if you put it in a horror film and give it the association with the terrifying imagery and the tension building, that song gets under your skin. Jay, girl, same. I am with you 100% on that one. We're also going to add right here the original A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. So the bathtub scene, seeing it young and impressionable, stuck with him his entire life and scares him to this day. That is Dawn. I'm with you, Dawn, 100%. I didn't see it when I was young. Still bothered me. The bathtub. Still don't want to sit in the tub without, too much bubbles because I got to be able to see if Freddy's down there. I'm with you. So I reached out to Mike Vanderbilt. Who the fuck is Mike Vanderbilt, you might ask? I'm going to say, look him up. He's on Instagram. He is very insightful and has a wealth of knowledge about the genre and everything surrounding it. Films I've never even heard of, he's talking about. So I had to get this man's opinion, and thank you so much, Mike Vanderbilt, for responding. His favorite horror film is A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, and when I asked why, he says it's the first time that he can remember the use of the concept of a killer in your dreams, so the originality of it. And then, of course, Wes Craven fills it in with so much imagination. I'm with you. I remember thinking when I first saw it, which was after 84, same thing, originality, like blew my mind. So thank you so much. All right, so moving on. So we've got The Strangers from 2008. To me, this is high up on the list as well because of the tension building and the plausibility. So believability of home invasion premise, creepy villainous performances, and the cinematography is why Ted likes this movie. It's unsettling how it could really happen, says Jeremiah. Again, what I'm right there with you, the believability factor. Could this happen to me? Horrifying concept. Then we move on to Scream, 1996. And this is where originality of the film, the plot itself, originality, comedy mixed in with the horror, flawlessly blended, Matthew Lillard's performance, the twist ending, the unexpected death of a star at the opening. That is why Titan loves this movie. And then, of course, we have Miss Nikki Flicks. Wes Craven's genius way of changing the genre with his great writing. It's a smart, self-aware movie. The casting, of course, being genuinely shocked by who the killers are on a first-time watch. Just everything about it. Nikki Flicks, this is her number one. This is her favorite scary movie. So we've got 2013's The Evil Dead remake. Personally, didn't like this film. I didn't really care for the original that much either. So it's not like I was like, ooh, remake, boo, hiss. I just didn't like this film. And it's kind of for the same reasons that Caleb loves it. Caleb says it's hard to watch because there are such horrifying images. That is why I don't like it. I felt like they tried to go over the top and in your face, and it didn't work for me. But God bless him, Caleb. That's why he loves it. On to Jaden. Jaden says she loves the special effects, the gore, and all the nods to the original. So there you have it. Then we have The Conjuring from 2013. Not surprised people liked that one. Good jump scares and very eerie, says Angie. Spooky, mischievous spirits, atmospheric, and it makes the hair on his neck stand up. And that's George. I'm with you. The Conjuring, even though I thought 2 was scarier, I love The Conjuring because it starts the whole thing off. Performances make it more believable. I was sucked in. Love it. Now we're going to breeze through the rest of these. These are the movies where only one person chimed in that it was their favorite. So we've got Psycho from 1960. The soundtrack, the mystery of it keeps you guessing. You can relate to Marion Crane's plight and the choices that she makes. Anthony Perkins as Norman plays it perfectly. He's handsome and mild-mannered, but also strange and creepy. And that's Tara. Cujo from 1983. Watched it when I was young, and being a dog lover made it more scary. And that's Dawn. Okay, this one, I had to look this one up. This is amazing. Demons 3, The Ogre by Lamberto Bava. It's part of the Demons trilogy from 1989. Steph says, creepy and eerie, still scares her to this day, and the soundtrack just gets her. I'm going to have to take your word on that, Steph. I have not seen that movie. In fact, I've never seen any of the Demons movies, but I feel like because this made the list, I should check it out. We have A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors from 1987. I love this movie. Comedy, very much leaned into with Freddy. But yet this is the one entry where it tips the scale and does the balance because he's still scary as a slasher. So it's combining the comedy and him being scary as a slasher. You get the fun story, great characters, and great music. And that is Maurice. I agree with you. That's probably my favorite film in the entire franchise, if I'm being honest with myself. I like to say the classic, like all stuffy, like, I like the classics, the originals. No, I like this one. This one was very much a slasher MTV music video all rolled into one. I was here for it. Then we have It, the TV miniseries from 1990. And seeing it as a child, Maurice again says, kids in such a harrowing situation, paranormal aspects, made it super terrifying to him seeing it as a small child. I would agree with that. Again, you're impressionable. Things stick with you. And then Maurice was also kind enough to say one of his other favorite scary movies was 1992's Candyman, because he felt it was nice to see the main character was portrayed by a Black man, so it was relatable. A very spooky feel for the movie, like it could maybe happen. And apparently, shame on you, Maurice, he and his friends would do the Candyman into the mirror and like try to get a little razzle dazzle happening in their world. I want to know, Maurice, let me know. Did Candyman ever show up? So then we've got Child's Play from 1988. Ross said, Chucky has always been scary to him. Not all dolls, mind you, just Chucky. Okay, I will accept that. Then we have Fright Night, 1985, a good mix of horror and comedy, the acting, the soundtrack, and of course, the special effects for the time. And that is Grant. I agree with you, Grant. I love that movie. Annabelle Creation, 2017, good jump scares. And that is from John, who also chimed in that the Universal Monsters black and white films is something he grew up on and loves those as well. I'm with you. There's nothing that beats the Universal movies. Those monster films, if we didn't have those, we wouldn't have what we have today. They're the classics for sure. But you know what? I actually agree with you. Annabelle Creation and I think it's Annabelle Comes Home were way better, like more jump scares and everything else than the first Annabelle. The first Annabelle was terrible. So I'm glad you mentioned this as your favorite because I'm kind of there with you. Army of Darkness from 1993, because it has Bruce Campbell, duh, and it's a great mix of horror and comedy. And that is Mike. That is his favorite horror movie. But I would argue, like I said to him, I don't know if I classify that necessarily as a horror movie, but I totally see why, because he's not into hardcore horror like I am. So it tracks that this would be his favorite when pressed for an answer. So Jessica mentioned The Shining from 1980. And her reason why this is her favorite scary movie is the best. She says, quote, everything about it. End quote. I'm with you. That movie just works on all levels. We have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. Direction, the way it's shot is so creepy. It feels like you're watching a home movie. It's very real. And the lack of gore, leaving a lot to the imagination, is scary to Darren. I kind of agree with you, Darren. I do. So then we have Trick or Treat from 2007. And Dave says the creepy overall vibe, the Sam character, and the anthology stories work as well as the wraparound story, and they all blend together seamlessly. And it's just a fun movie. Dave, I don't agree with you, but a lot of people out there do. They really like that movie. So I realized I actually did have a second person chime in here on Trick or Treat. Brian says he loves how Doherty wrote several stories that include lore and urban myth as a sort of anthology, and then weaves them together in a story that comes full circle. It's just an awesome movie. That is why it's Brian's favorite scary movie. So the Final Destination franchise from 2000 to 2011 has several entries, and Jessica says she likes the cool concept. It preys on the inner anxiety of what could really happen. Final Destination 3, a lot of people say is their favorite. 2 gets under everybody's skin because what is the meme or the picture or the comment on social media and Facebook that always gets you going, I know it, when you see on like a major highway, a logging truck, a big old truck hauling those trees. What's the first thing you think of? Final Destination 2, and you get the fuck out of the way, don't you? You do not want to be anywhere near that truck or those trees. So I would actually say that movie, even though people don't love it, it's made a lasting impression on anybody that knows horror films. So good call there, Jessica. Tara said Carrie from 1976 is her favorite scary movie as well. She had a couple. Unexpected, terrifying ending on first time viewing, great acting, believable bullies, and you really feel for the main character because Sissy Spacek plays her 100% believable. I'm with you, Tara. I did, however, like The Rage Carrie too for completely different reasons. But yes, Carrie is a classic. Killer Clowns from Outer Space made this list from 1988 from Beth chiming in because she said, even though it's cheesy, she hates and is scared of clowns. So that totally makes sense. But it's her favorite scary movie, and that's why, because clowns terrify her. I think a lot of you out there are in that same boat, just going to say. American Psycho also, Beth said, because the main character is truly crazy, and that is scary. Rosemary's Baby from 1968 made the list. Chills just watching it. The way it was filmed, the music, the sinister feeling, the subject matter with the devil, and that was also Tara. The Devil's Rejects, Rob Zombie's vision from 2005, what he thinks is horrific, his directing, the story, and that it could possibly happen, these crazy people doing crazy stuff, and that is Christy. Fallen from 1998, suspenseful, keeps you guessing, humorous, great performances, and a great soundtrack, and that is Jimmy. Ghost Ship from 2002, great story, the ghost elements, the twist, the blood and guts, and an iconic opening scene, and that is from Jamie. I agree with you, girl. That scene, to me, opening, everybody knows that opening scene. Even if you don't like the movie, you know that opening scene. So I'm here with you. We have Saw, the original Saw from 2004. Peter says he likes the games, people being forced to choose to live for the right reasons, and of course, the gore. A Quiet Place from 2018. Stephanie says it's her favorite scary movie because it's atmospheric, creepy, and it gets you emotionally invested. That's as good a reason as any. We have the Salem's Lot miniseries from 1979. Creepy imagery, especially the kid floating outside the window. And that's from David. Yes, agreed. That movie, even on a rewatch, that scene gets me. The Descent from 2006. Claustrophobic, atmospheric, and the cannibalistic humanoid creatures. That is why Ted thinks this is the best scary movie. Like, this is his favorite. I'm with you. This is a phenomenal motion picture. Allie says The Omen from 1976 is her favorite scary movie, although I did not get a reason as to why. But I really don't need her to give me reasons because everything about this movie, the subject matter, the performances lend to the believability. That kid is creepy AF. Oh, so yeah, I'm not sure why you would think it is, Allie, but it's probably for the same reasons. It's just gets under your skin, the score, everything about that movie. My entry for just a one-off is to this list, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978 with Donald Sutherland. OMG. This movie is unnerving to me. I cannot listen to that screeching noise when they open their mouth and yell, and that ending scene where he's pointing and yelling. I can't do it. The thought of a pod person forming and replacing you, the whole thing is unnerving and unsettling to me, even though it's obviously not plausible. It doesn't matter because the film is so effective in portraying everything. Oh, it's like in my top 5 favorite scary movies because it truly does bother me and get under my skin. We have an entry here for Evil Dead 2 from 1987. Bruce Campbell, comedy horror mix, and she felt it was very original in storytelling at the time, and that was Melissa. We have Cabin in the Woods. As y'all know, if you've listened to the episode on that one, how I feel about it. But Cabin in the Woods from 2011. Chris says he likes the way it combines different types of horror and scares and good comedy. Super original plot for the time. Great casting, especially Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford. And it just kept you guessing. So that's why it's his favorite. Russell had 2 to offer. The first being, Russell has pointed out that depending on when you ask, his answer will change. But at the moment, A Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010 is high on the list, if not number 1 right now, because the subject matter of it, he appreciated a retelling where it was darker, grittier. Freddy was darker. His story was darker. He wasn't such a approachable, lovable guy like Robert Englund's Freddy. Jackie Earle Haley is very creepy and scary and did a great job as such. I agree with you, Russell, 100%. Now, he also says, though, he kind of wants to throw Freddy versus Jason from 2003 out there because his massive love of the 2 franchises, Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, when you throw those 2 together and those worlds collide, it's going to be great, even if the movie's not perfect. So he loves that one as well. And then Miss J says Jeepers Creepers from 2001. I'm going to say, she didn't say this, but I'm going to say, yes, good call, because the same reason Insidious gets that tiptoes and the tulips under your skin, this one has that old-timey Jeepers Creepers song in it. Oh my God. Talk about like old-timey, simple song in a horror movie. And it gets under your skin and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear it. Don't play that song. But Jay's reason for thinking that this is a really good scary movie is because it's an original story. The creature is very original, and especially because of his need of different body parts, like what he needs off of you. That is very scary to her. I agree. I definitely agree with that. I think that went really well as far as everybody chiming in with all the movies that I would expect to be people's favorite scary movie. There were a few surprises on there, not going to lie. However, I am still curious as to what you all think. So if you didn't have the opportunity to chime in and answer that poll question for this episode, reach out on socials. You can email me. You can go to our discussion group. You can respond on the page. You can go to Instagram. I just want to talk with you. I want to know. Horror is my favorite. Like, let's talk horror movies, guys. What else? I want to thank you all for listening. On that note, we'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Hey listeners, Movie Miss here, saying we know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so we want to thank you so much for listening to ours. Please make sure to find us on our socials and join us, be part of our bad movie conversations. We want to chat with you. We're on Facebook with an official page, as well as a Let's Talk Turkeys discussion group, where you can talk with other like-minded individuals who like bad movies. We're on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Our Twitter handle is at Gobble Podcast. That's GOBBLEPODCAST. And of course, you can always email us direct. We would love to get suggestions from you of movies you would like us to cover. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love that. So directly, that's Let's Talk Turkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
Hey.